Today's guilty verdict forever brands R. Kelly as a predator who used his fame and fortune to prey on the young, the vulnerable, and the voiceless.
Infamous singer R. Kelly convicted on several charges of sex trafficking and racketeering. The jury, made up of 7 men and 5 women, made their decision after a month of testimony and evidence.
To the victims in this case, your voices were heard and justice was finally served.
The prosecution brought more than 40 witnesses to the stand. The witnesses included former employees, former live-in girlfriends, and others. Prosecutors said Kelly had physically and sexually abused women and girls. The prosecution framed Kelly as a leader of a criminal enterprise with the help of his associates to recruit young women and girls to engage in sexual activity.
He has this type of intimidation right off the bat. I was just waiting for it to be over.
The defense described the charge as overreaching and that many of the relationships were consensual. Kelly's defense team called a handful of witnesses to the stand who say they never saw abuse by Kelly. The R&B singer previously addressed the accusations after numerous women came forward in the documentary Surviving R. Kelly.
They was describing Lucifer. I'm not Lucifer.
The story of how the R&B superstar was finally brought to justice is quite remarkable. I was joined a short time ago from Brooklyn, New York by CNN reporter Daryl Forges, who's been following the case. CNN reporter Daryl Forges joins me from Brooklyn, New York. This news about R. Kelly, it's a huge story. How's it been received there in the United States?
Yeah, well, there has been mixed messages when it comes down to the overall verdict. Now, inside, Kieran, this was the first time the media was actually allowed inside of the courtroom for the past 6 weeks of this trial, because during the trial, the media was only allowed inside of an overflow room, mainly due to COVID-19 concerns. So this is the first time we were able to get a look inside of the court proceedings firsthand in person. And when the verdict was read out, R. Kelly did not really react at all. He was pretty much stoic and didn't really move once the verdict was being read. But according to his attorney, he says that he was very surprised at the verdict and that they were very disappointed in the outcome. Now, outside of the courtroom, it's quiet now, but earlier today, we saw a few people out here who supported R. Kelly, wearing R. Kelly's innocent T-shirts and even playing his music, blasting his music all throughout this area. As soon as they heard the verdict being announced that he was guilty on all 9 counts, you could just feel the emotion from his supporters. Many were crying, some turned off their music, but they still said that they're going to support Kelly and whatever happens next. Now, the jury in this situation, it took them about 9 hours to deliberate and decide to convict Kelly on all 9 charges.
Daryl, in relation to the allegations, or now the convictions against R. Kelly, they date back a number of decades, don't they, in some cases? Explain to our viewers the extent of what has been proven in this case.
Yeah, several decades, women, and even in some cases, men who accuse R. Kelly of sexually abusing them, rape, and also videotaping illegally those sexual acts. There's even some accusations as far back as 1991. Now, when it comes down to the overall charges, he's facing 8 counts of sex trafficking and 1 count of racketeering. But underneath racketeering, there was 14 acts that the jury had to look at, and they had to pick at least 2 to fully convict Kelly of the racketeering charge. Now, racketeering is, of course, illegally running a business, and that fit the narrative of the prosecution. They claimed that Kelly, for decades, ran a criminal enterprise with the help of people in his inner circle to recruit young women and girls to engage in illegal sexual activity. As a matter of fact, some of those women spoke and took the stand, including Geronda Pace. She was the first person to take the stand during this trial. She actually sent out an Instagram post reacting to R. Kelly's verdict being announced. I'm going to read that to you right now. She said, quote, "I'm thankful to stand with those who are brave enough to speak up. I'm happy to finally close this chapter of my life. And that's a big thing for many of these women. Now, on the other side, the defense says that these charges were overreaching and that the prosecution pretty much cherry-picked their evidence to fit their narrative that Kelly ran a criminal enterprise for decades. Now, the prosecution and the U.S. Attorney's Office say that justice was finally served for these women. Now, Kelly's legal battles are far from over. He will be sentenced on May 4th of next year, but he's also facing additional legal challenges in the state of Illinois and also Minnesota.
And Daryl, just finally, there are obviously some comparisons being made with another high-profile sex trafficking crime and, well, subsequent death, that being Jeffrey Epstein, and it, of course, unfolding in New York City as well. What are the considerations being made, the comparisons being made between this and the matter of Epstein?
Well, it just all depends on really how the prosecution really framed this when it came down to running this criminal enterprise, something very similar to what Jeffrey Epstein was accused of doing as well. And the thing about it is that the way that he, as well as the people of his inner circle, tried to influence young women and girls to engage in illegal sexual activity, and also when it comes down to the other charges, those 8 counts of sex trafficking, that was whether or not Kelly violated the Mann Act. And the Mann Act, that's of charges dealing with sex trafficking and potentially driving and flying women to Chicago and other places to engage in that illegal sexual activity. Of course, Kelly was found not guilty of child pornography charges 13 years ago in Illinois. And then, of course, fast forward to 2019 when Surviving R. Kelly, the documentary, was released, and really heard some damning testimony and a lot of accusations from these women, very graphic accusations from women saying that Kelly would make them stay in rooms for days. They had to have permission to eat, and that they also claimed that he physically and mentally abused them. We did get a chance to hear some of those tapes in the courtroom of Kelly saying certain things to those women. It was very graphic to hear what he was telling those women and girls at the time. But at this point, many are happy at this point. They believe that this is a long time coming against R. Kelly, and they're looking forward to many more charges, like I said earlier, from Illinois and Minnesota that's to come in the next coming months.
CNN reporter Daryl Forges joining me from Brooklyn, New York. Thanks for your time, Daryl.
Thank you.